Well, good evening, everybody. We reached 15 degrees here this morning, and unless we have a record-breaking outbreak, that's probably going to go down as the coldest night of the year. Oklahoma City this morning, they reached -1, and it was 14 at DFW. And you can see that here on the minimum temperature analysis map. Thanks for joining the Meteorology Lab channel. I'm Tim Vasquez, and we'll be taking a look around the weather, around the country at the weather this evening. I looked at the astronomical calendar this evening. Not much going on except Pluto is at conjunction. It's at completely the opposite side of the sun, so we couldn't see it even if we wanted to. And as you might guess, the best time to observe Pluto is going to be in the summer when we're around the other side of the sun. Also, one thing that's kind of interesting, there was a predicted man-made satellite collision this afternoon about 4:53 p.m. Eastern. It had a 44% risk. If that had happened, that would have been a major threat to a lot of the satellites up in the 500 to 800 kilometer band. That would include Hubble and ISS. That would have been a big mess, but fortunately we got past that. We really dodged a bullet. Temperatures cooling down once again up there in the North Plains, a lot of -10s and -20s. As I mentioned, we bottomed out pretty low. These aren't record-shattering temperatures, but definitely on the cold side, probably the coldest temperature of the season. Temperature anomaly right now, entire country is cold. Just about everywhere below normal for this time of the year, except for Tucson and Nogales and part of LA, Orange County, and San Diego. So here's what's shaping the patterns. There's the 500 millibar analysis for this evening. And as you can see, we're predominantly under a northwesterly flow. We outline the troughs going by the long waves, and we're going something like that right there. And you can see embedded in that are the smaller scale waves. There's a major low right there, and it looks like we finally broke that Rex block pattern. You can see the cutoff low used to be down here, and it's starting to pull out towards Alaska and a piece of it heading for California. And a couple of other small troughs, one coming through Minnesota right there, another one entrenched down there in Tennessee. So it's going to be a cold night there for sure. And a couple small ones off the Maritimes and coming up on Iceland. And we'll zoom in a little bit on the U.S. and take a look at the large-scale flow. You can see right there, there's the location of the jet. And I guess that's the polar front jet. We'll have to look at some charts there to find out for sure. But I guess we're probably tracking a polar front, something like this here. And maybe a piece of it further up north in the Great Lakes. And that's there, of course, because of the very strong cold front to the south. And we need to pull that up. Let me go and get the graphics from INSEP, and we'll do the thickness analysis. Okay. There we go. Let me check over here and make sure the audio is good. It looks good to me. I've got green here on my board. Eddie says 2 inches of snowpack, 14 degrees at 01Z. Jackson, Tennessee. I believe 0 possible in Tennessee. I guess we'll look at that for the synoptic charts, the GFS, a little bit later. 12 degrees from Sue there in Indiana. And she wishes she was in Tahoe. 7 inches there. Yeah, that's going to be some good skiing conditions there, I'm sure. Here's the thickness and isobars. Isobars are going to be the black lines. The thickness, that's going to be the blue and red lines. And I haven't talk too much about what the difference is between blue and red. This basically separates areas of 540 decameters from below 540 decameters. So the 540 line is about right there. Anything south of that is generally associated with liquid precipitation. Anything below that, you're usually talking snow or mixed precipitation. And that's just a general rule of thumb there. So we're finding the strongest packing across a broad band across the U.S. So we'll place the front out in the Gulf again, coming up on Cuba, way out to the south, and then it's back into the mountains of the Rockies, the southern Rockies right there. Where is it in the West Coast? Well, we've got a little bit of support for it right in here in California. Also, maybe a little bit of banding in Oregon. So it could be another front there. Those are the two places we'll kind of watch. Looks like a little banding here in the Four Corners area. So we'll check out Arizona there. Okay, we'll bring up the current data. Let me bring up the surface analysis. I don't quite have that ready here. Bring up digital atmosphere here, and we'll do our data retrieval. This is going to bring in the METAR and synoptic data. This forms the core of the surface data that we deal with every day. So once we have that plotted, there we go. We can see we've got a lot of teens in Oklahoma and Kansas, 20s and teens there. Texas, a little bit warmer this evening. Starting to get that southerly flow starting to come around here. The coldest temperatures are going to be correlated with where we have the calm winds for the most part. And that's going to be kind of concentrated in this area right here. So we can see just to the east of there, we have northerly winds. And then we've got the clockwise circulation around that high. So basically, this is going to correspond to the coldest temperatures tonight. And that's going to shift eastward a little bit during the overnight hours. So, yeah, we're looking at certainly Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, Little Rock. It's going to be a very cold night in this area. I don't know about zero. That kind of depends really specifically on which area you're in and how much radiational cooling you get, but I do see a lot of single digits in this area here. Elsewhere around the country, we were going to go find that front in the West Coast. Let's go check that out. I think we're probably looking at that being pretty far south. We've got 46 in Las Vegas, little east wind there. I'm kind of on the fence whether the cold front is through there or not. Probably it is. 61 at Phoenix, yeah, that's pretty warm. So, yeah, probably got a front, maybe something like that. Just my preliminary guess there. And I guess we're picking it up through the San Joaquin Valley, through here, through Stockton, around Sacramento, and around Yosemite. And 7 degrees right there in central Oregon. A lot of cold air in that region. And I'm trying to see what kind of circulation is going on here. I guess we've got kind of a general area of high pressure, maybe right in this area. You can see just a little bit of clockwise flow around that. But it looks like the bulk of the high pressure, that's centered in Wyoming here. I don't know about that 1039 there, but I can see a lot of 1030. Yeah, there's 1040 right there, so that's where the western U.S. high is centered right there. And got another 1040 high. Yeah, 1043 centered in this area right there. So that's the large-scale pattern, what's going on. I was going to talk a little bit about cold weather. The coldest outbreak in Texas and Oklahoma in the past 100 years was in 1989. We had a very sharp cold air outbreak coming from Canada. This is a few days before that, and I'm showing you kind of like what the air mass looked like before that took place. And you can see lots of extremely cold air, minus 25 there at Swift Current, Saskatchewan, minus 35. Here at Hudson Bay. Is that Hudson Bay? It's kind of a weird name for a town because Hudson Bay is way up here. Minus 33 at Winnipeg, and this is fairly deep cold air. And you can see over the next couple of days that shifts southward. We get a 1052 millibar high. That's going to generate a huge density current that's going to push that air southward. And you can see over the next couple of days, down to minus 3 in Oklahoma City and 7, and it got even colder the very next day. December 23rd of 89, this was it right here. You can see Dallas-Fort Worth there with 0, minus 5 at Oklahoma City, minus 14 at Wichita, and even Houston down to the single digits. So that was some serious cold air there. And let's talk about the three-dimensional structure of the atmosphere. Well, we know that maybe that's not the best map to be using. Let me find my thickness analysis right here. We know the front is well down to the south, down in this area. So we're going to expect to find an upper level front, maybe at 700 millibars about there, maybe 500 about there. And below that, a very deep air mass across this region. So the soundings are going to look like this. Let's click on Fort Worth. So the radiosonde data just an hour ago, showing a very strong frontal inversion, topped out at about 17,000 feet. So that's some very deep polar air. 3 miles deep. There's the top of it right there. Above that, I guess some residual tropical air, because if you bring that down to the surface, you get about 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm not bringing it down dry adiabatically. I'm just kind of bringing it down somewhere in between the dry and moist adiabatic lapse rate. And that gives me a general idea of what kind of air mass this is aloft. So that's the remains of the tropical air right there. And below that, the cold polar air. And the other story is what's happening aloft. We can see that the flow is still out of the north there at Fort Worth. So that tells us we're going to have one more cold night coming up. Once that flow starts coming around to the south, that's going to mean warm air advection is in place. Let's check out Tennessee, because we know that's going to be a cold night there. Nashville sounding looking like this. It's kind of hard to tell exactly where the polar air is. I think we're kind of like north of the troposphere fold. I think this is a lot of cold polar air all the way up the column. And surface temperatures there in the teens, and we're probably going to see that radiational inversion build overnight, and the sounding is going to become like that by morning. And you can see very strong northerly flow aloft. Up at about 5 to 10,000 feet, we're out of the northwest at 20 to 30 knots, so that's piping that cold air down pretty strongly there. Okay, I think we're about geared up to go into the forecast. Get that chart set up. We're looking at the GFS model right there. Okay, I'll take a quick look at the chat here and see if there's any comments. Yep, Siberian Express, kind of in that pattern. Talking about the Pineapple Express coming into California here. So we're bringing that in tomorrow. Felix says. Fred says that station is called the Pass, or the Pass. I guess that's French, maybe. Scooty Workshop. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll have to do something like that for sure. In fact, that's the plan for my next book, if I can get started on that, I want to try to have that out by this spring. Scooty and sounding forecasting book. Okay, so here we go. Starting out the forecast. Cold air mass across the central and eastern U.S. So by the time we do the program tomorrow, we're going to be looking pretty much like this. High pressure over the Appalachians here. Most of the cold air advection, that'll be confined to the East Coast. And you can see a very large area of warm air advection setting up across this entire region right here. And you can see we're starting to open up the Gulf. You can see isobars extending from Texas offshore. So now we're starting to bring in a trajectory from the open waters. And that's going to mean a warm up here. Bit of a weak Alberta clipper coming southward, driven by a high pressure area right in this region. Right up here. And now you can see the Pacific area getting active. Got a very strong gradient coming in from offshore. And GFS painting out a lot of heavy rain across Northern California, basically from Fresno northward, and hitting the Sierra Nevada mountains right there pretty good. And for our webcast on Monday, still got a open flow here on the Northern California coast. And it looks like we've brought in a upper level system into the Central Rockies right there. So snow once again for the Colorado ski regions. And we've got a bit of a lee side trough developing there in the central U.S. under this very deep warm air advection. So I think we're going to see a very drastic warm up over the next few days. Probably be right back up to the 60s and 70s later this week. Fronts are going to be looking kind of like this. Looks like our Alberta clipper didn't make much headway. Wednesday looking like this. Got a bit of a weak front. Probably trailing like that into the northern plains. Texas itself still under this warm southerly flow here. And we can see liquid precipitation all the way up into the Great Lakes. So a lot of that warm air making its way to the northeast. And still lots of polar air up to the north, but that's being driven mostly eastward like that. Looks active again in Northern California. Looks like LA is missing out on this stuff, unfortunately. For Wednesday's webcast, looks like a lot of that system moves inland. Texas still under southerly flow, so we're bringing up a lot of moisture. And in fact, let me show you that moisture coming in here. Okay, this is Sunday, then Monday, and then Tuesday. Now you can see that moisture coming up. And by Tuesday's webcast, 60s all the way up in East Texas. These are dew points. And because the dew points are in the low 60s, that automatically means air temperatures are going to be in the mid to upper 60s and possibly 70s. So very warm for this region right here. And it looks like that maxes out around Friday and Saturday. And I'd imagine with that much moisture, we've got a risk of thunderstorms coming up for probably Friday and Saturday. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. 60s in Mississippi and Alabama there, so possibly thunderstorms over the weekend there too. And let's see that come together here. Thursday is going to look like this. Here comes some cold air coming through. Looks like a little disturbance coming through the central Rockies. And then Friday's webcast, we're looking like this. Big, large cold front coming into Texas. You can see that right there. In fact, the GFS breaking out a squall line along the leading edge of that system, with sleet on the backside of that and snow in Missouri and Illinois. So that'll come through Texas on Friday night and it's Saturday. And then Saturday evening looking like this. Front all the way through here. And this looks like mostly antifront type precipitation back behind the front. So this will act kind of like a warm front. Looks like a mixed bag here in Tennessee and northern Alabama, Arkansas. And we get a little bit of cyclogenesis in here. So some of that mixed precip hangs on in Tennessee there. Monday, Tuesday on the 15th and 16th. That gradually moves up the coast and moderates. And we get a lot of cold air moving into the central U.S. here. Tuesday the 17th. And I guess that gets towards the end of the GFS period. Kind of an upper level system coming through the southern Rockies on the 21st on Saturday. And looks like that'll affect Texas, but the details are going to be pretty much up in the air because that's 360 hours out. I think tomorrow we should take a look at the CFS model and see what's coming up for later this month. See if there's any big changes, forecast any big changes in the long wave pattern. We'll have to check that out. But anyway, that's about all I got for me. Fred asks the difference between ana and catafront. The simple answer is if you have a front kind of laid out like that. With a catafront, most of your precip is going to be along and ahead of the front. With a anafront, a lot of the precip and clouds, those are going to be way back behind the frontal surface, like that. So we tend to see a lot of anafronts. That's a major mode of frontal development in the Pacific region. Catafronts, they tend to be more common in the central and eastern U.S. In fact, that's probably a good example right there of a catafront. You can see that precip is not packed behind the frontal boundary like it was with that last system back on the 14th and 13th. So there you go. You can probably find out some more about that on the internet. Just put in ana or catafront and there will probably be some good diagrams there to check out. Okay, that's probably about all I got here, so I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you at the usual time tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Thanks.